So this is, I think, a major legal innovation for the space that we will bring alongside with technical innovation. It will be the most honest form of data ownership and co-ownership of a project that people in crypto will have ever had. It's quite radical, and I'm not sure people are ready for it.
I'd love to hear you talk about what is the vision around Common Ground. Some people know about it. Some people have never heard of it. What are you building? Why did you give up all that other pathway to get here?
Starting with the ecosystems you mentioned, indeed, they were the first black magic trick that we found to actually bring users to the app. It was the insight that crypto is not just structured in communities, it is structured in ecosystems first. Communities typically establish themselves within an ecosystem, sometimes even multiple, but they tend to have one ecosystem. Why? Because communities often have on-chain artifacts that define that community or the purpose of the community or why everybody relates. Typically, these on-chain assets are trapped on one chain or issued on one chain and really belong to one chain. That is how the tradition is and dictated by the tech. In the future, probably more multi-chain, but that's how it is right now. And so we were, well, if we have a hard time to convince single communities to come and stay on the platform, what if we convince an ecosystem with hundreds or even thousands of communities to create a network effect? A pocket of trust, a pocket of networked relationships between communities as collective entities and users as individuals that actually worked. Luxo was the first ecosystem we did that with, followed by Fuel, and now talking to a bunch of other interesting ones as well to join us. It brought us from maybe 5,000 people to over 50, over 60,000 people now. That was a great growth multiplier. Our graphs were just exponentially exploding. The hockey stick you've always wanted to see as a founder, we had it in front of us. That was amazing. But it was not enough really to retain people even after, let's say, Luxo took a little side quest in figuring out some things. That is a deeper problem in crypto, how to retain users that you've onboarded with incentives, or in our case, without incentives, but still sort of, hype and a lot of attention, which you cannot hold forever. So how do you retain people? Our vision, to answer your question, where this is all going, we need to create so much value for users and communities that it becomes a daily driver, the app, and not just something you sometimes remember, which is sort of the status we sort of are trapped in at the moment. And there's obviously some very basic things you can do with notifications and sending more emails, just being more present in your channel so you think of us more often. But this is only, helpful if there is some more original value proposition on the app. Now, one thing we have known for a while, probably from the beginning, but took us ages to really get to a point where we felt we're ready for it, is a lot more on-chain integrations. So actually make it a coordination tool that brings me the governance decisions, it brings me my on-chain roles, it brings me my various on-chain identities and social graphs, it brings me potential on-chain things that I want to be involved in, from reputation systems to appraise systems. So a system for mutual recognition, like peer-to-peer validation of work results, making work in communities more measurable, let's say, with on-chain documentation and attestations, to build up something, a meaningful profile and CV that in the future will just generate money in the form of work, interesting projects, collaborations, governance, involvements, guardianships, community management and leadership roles, growth roles. Like there's so many things that come out of being good at community work in this industry, but you cannot really put that on your CV right now, like a GitHub pull request, merge bullshit, the green dots. So we want to make all these Web3 protocols that currently do a tiny fraction of that. ERC 725, cool. I can have a key value store now with a profile. Awesome. But what should I put in that key value store? Now there is a follow-up button. Cool. But what other things could be in that key value store? It's actually applications that have to come up with that. That's what Fabian from
Yeah.
Luxor always says. Guys, I've built the rails. You have to build the interesting shit running on the rails. And so doing a lot more on-chain stuff like that, which we think is extremely promising. But then what I also want to share, what I find so cool is that we now have two ecosystems. One we've already onboarded, SI3, but now a new one that we're about to onboard soon, that all want a learning management system for all their communities. They want a fully integrated learning tool with live sessions, recordings, on-chain attestations, and rewards for fulfilling a course or having a streak, peer-to-peer validation, but also access to grants when you have amassed a certain skill tree of verifiable and verified knowledge. Like there is so much potential in improving onboarding of people as a learning journey, not like, hey, crypto, buy that stupid coin, but hey, crypto, you can quit your fucking job that you hate and you can live like a nomad, earn money from the internet because you're a good person in online communities that are building the future of whatever it is. There's so much like, to me, that is such a much more interesting route of onboarding people if it's through work and payment for work and having higher social status because you do more meaningful work and actually having work that might give you purpose, not just it feeds my family. I feel that
Yeah.
is why a lot of us went into this industry. I went into crypto in a sense, you could say, because my alternative was working in a law firm, and that would have
Yeah.
entirely destroyed me. So I think this learning aspect is very interesting, combining that with on-chain stuff. I also have a big vision of Degen versus Regen, right? It's not entirely new, but I think what is sort of emerging is this idea that, we don't hate pump.fun because they use token creation and bonding curves as primitives for community building. That's fucking awesome. Let's learn from them,
Mm.
but let's put in more things to make it not such a zero sum thing that is going to be dead in 6 months because people have finished the game. Everything that was there to give to the top is gone. But let's use this somehow more creatively. I think, yes, let's let people to degen things. It's an incentive game after all, but embed it into a more meaningful framework that takes into consideration the conditions of the working class. They don't understand the future we're building. They can't relate to it. They have no savings. They have no upside. They have no hope in their lives. And you're building what a fintech app. It's like, get a grip. We need to actually be aware of the world and start integrating it more into the games we're playing.
What you're saying is building applications that are actually useful, right? Beyond just kind of entertainment. And like you can be entertained by things that are useful. I'm engaged with it in multiple domains, right? In Pumped Up Fun, I've never used it. I can be honest. I've never used it because I really just don't fucking understand like betting on some random thing that I have no control over. If I want to do that, I'll just go to a roulette table. I'll bet black or red, right? That seems very easy to me. I don't understand that whole world around meme coin pop up. It's got a great team they're building. Well, what the fuck are they building? Answer: nothing. They're just building hype. So maybe at some point you can find someone else to sell it to. None of this makes sense to me. However, like you said, the rails, the things that exist inside that actually have potential to move humanity forward in a productive way. What I love about Common Ground, right? And I'm obviously mentioning Common Ground because you're here in front of me. I can tell you what I love about Common Ground is you're actually trying to solve problems. And what is that problem? The problem is, how do I coordinate with someone that is non-local to
Mhm.
me? It's easy for me to coordinate with my wife who's local to me in this house or my children or even someone who lives down the street, but coordinating with you on the other side of the globe, that is a very, very difficult proposition. Where do we come together? Where do we find that common
Mhm.
ground? And then once we're there, what do we build together? Most people are non-technical. They're not going to be able to build things, right? They're not going to be able to go to the code, make it happen, and then release it to the wild. Instead, they might be participating these I don't know, the domain in which they can participate is
Mm,
expansive, right? And that's what you're saying. You're building this coordination tool where users can participate in areas where their input is valued. They can build valuable connections, a valuable experience that keeps them coming back because they're getting something out of it. And it doesn't have to be purely financial.
mm,
And again, that's another thing that I think people say, but don't really think about what they mean when they say it's not purely financial, right? Because, like you said, I could get a job and that would benefit me financially. But the relationship, the trust, all the other pieces are the important part that made the financial gain happen at the end. And that's where you guys are, I think, with Common Ground already. You've been putting the work in building apps when no one else was building apps. So now you have an application that you can add more things to, but you've done the critical piece, which is put together the foundational elements so you can now build on top of
mm,
it. And everyone else in the industry is still just trying to catch up to where are all the
mm,
apps. And I love the fact selfishly that I went out down the long tail of assets on Luxo. And yeah, maybe that didn't work out so well for driving Lambos at the moment. But where I found myself is in a place where I do feel I'm connected to people that are building experiences, connections, opportunities for me to engage with my fellow global passengers on this
mm,
spaceship, right? That's really important to me. And that's what you're building. It feels
mm,
like I'm
mm.
thankful. And I want to bring up Florian because I just logged into Common Ground today to go to the lightning talk. When I updated the app, first thing it told me, hey, we're doing a public sale soon. Would you like to join the newsletter? Would you like to join the mailing list? And I said, fuck yes, I would. Right? Punch
Thank you,
that
thank you.
in and hit join. So maybe I mean, you can talk about whatever you want, but I think people would be interested to know about a public sale that you're doing because you've said over and over again, you want Common
Yeah,
Ground to be owned by the
yeah.
people, right? So now that you're here, what does that look
Yeah,
like?
it's time to make that promise real. I mean, we always wanted to be approachable anyways, and we've tried to build as many feature requests as our users gave us. We weren't able to build all of them because prioritizing well is something you learn over time, and we learned our fair share of lessons of setting the priorities right. But anyways, there was just a lot of basics to fix until we could do a lot of the wishes. But we've always tried to cater to the users because that's something you can do from day one. Saying it's actually co-owned can mean much more. For us, it always meant that ultimately the incentive structures behind the game that we're playing have to work out for a long-term socially beneficial outcome. And to us, that means that it cannot be, like it went with Facebook and, any other social app that ever came, that it sort of gives all these addictive incentives in the beginning. And once it has everybody, it becomes really shitty and just an extractive game where advertisers then, like this is called N-shittification. Cory Doctorow, a famous internet native intellectual, now a big enemy of crypto, unfortunately. But he
Mm,
got famous with it has a Wikipedia entry. People can read up on it. It's called N-shittification, and it just means every internet platform will eventually become really shitty because it goes from user focus to advertiser focus or whoever is the extractor in the game that's being played.
right.
Um, we realized luckily we realized before we even started Common Ground that if we do this, we have to change the entire incentives from day one, because if you don't fix it on day one, once you're successful, you can never get out of it. Before you're successful, you will never have the resources again to do it differently than how you configured it when you started. You have one shot. So what we did is we did not build Common Ground as a limited liability corporation that has shareholders and all a Delaware corp, which is what a US startup would be doing, and in Germany would be a GmbH or a UG, and in Britain it would be a limited. So we didn't do that. We went for non-profit, decentralized association. This has now gotten a name, DUNA, in Wyoming. It's a new law there on how to regulate DAOs, how to give DAOs limited liability. But Switzerland, where we are, has had the concept of a DUNA for over 100 years. So Common Ground is
Yeah.
organized as DUNA. We don't have shareholders. We don't have shares. All we have is governance, and that governance is governed by a token. Our idea is now to give that token to uh, to bring people into ownership of that token, partially through a sale because we need money and we rather want the money of our communities and users than that of investors, which might not have perfect incentive alignment. But in other ways also obviously through whatever ways there are to distribute a token. Funny enough, distributing a token fairly is among the most difficult things you can do in crypto because it boils down to an identity question. How do you prevent people from getting more than they should have potentially?
Sure.
It's a game we're fully prepared to play. We think about it as a huge coordination game, and it will be an infinite game. It will start with phase one or phase zero, but then continue forever because we will forever have to bring honest agents together to verify who else is honest and who is not, who is a threat. In a pluralistic world, this happens across many communities. There's not one community that decides everything, but there is a pluralistic set of communities who decide who they want to trust. But that together gives one big trust graph. And there will be people inside and outside of it. Those outside are hopefully bad players, bots. Um, we want to play that coordination game, and part of that coordination game is going to be the public sale. I think it's going to be a really interesting journey for us, for everybody who wants to play it with us. The end state, how we see common ground, how the coordination game in common ground's case would maybe not end, but reach a huge milestone, is if there are effectively first, well, right now there's this common ground donor that wants to do the public sale, but at some point afterwards, we want there to be a cooperative, the common ground co-op. And this common ground co-op should be the vehicle that is really owned by everybody who's on common ground, communities, ecosystems, people. And this cooperative will be sort of a bridge between what happens on chain and legal ownership off chain. It will also be capable of running blended infrastructure, which is for the foreseeable future, maybe forever, what will be necessary to run these sophisticated social apps like Common Ground. So you have Web 2 servers doing some kinds of things, you have on chain stuff doing some kinds of things, and it all comes together for the user in a seamless, blended experience. And this cooperative is, as far as I know, the only way to run blended infrastructure in a fully user owned and fully transparent way. So this is a major legal innovation for the space that we will bring alongside technical innovation. It will be the most honest form of data ownership and co-ownership of a project that people in crypto will have ever had. It's quite radical, and I'm not sure people are ready for it. This is going to be a multi-year process, but the end state is to say Common Ground, the association, the Duna that we are right now, doesn't even exist anymore. It's like training wheels. It's not needed. In the very end state, Common Ground is a fully user-owned and self-governed organization. Maybe the cooperative will not be necessary in 10, 20 years anymore because we've transcended beyond that. Or maybe it's still going to be around protecting the users and customers and everybody who's using this app, not only on chain against hackers and whatever, but also off chain against governments. It has a rootedness in the real world, which I think is actually benefit and not a problem. So that's sort of the end state where we want to go. Now I've given you the very big vision. It all starts with a token sale that we want to do, but even the token sale is probably not going to be the first. We want to really open it up as a game. It should be interactive, great storytelling, and it should rally people. It should be a rallying cry to bring everybody together and then be part of an experience that, among other things, will have a token sale, but also really on a broader scale is a coordination game to bring everybody together who wants to solve that problem and who thinks that this can be a very valuable community that comes together to change something. So that's how we want to approach it.
I love it. And honestly, I think as a group, Common Ground is uniquely positioned to play this game, given personal expertise across the Duna, the people participating in the Duna right now. You've got a pretty good team there. You have yourself a fairly extensive background in legal structures, so that helps out, right? You're not flying by the seat of your pants, but you also, I think, are aligned going back to maybe the beginning of this conversation, like, what is this all about? Like, what are we even doing? Right? You are building that web of trust on in the app layer where it's so needed right now. And in looking forward, not looking back,
Mm.
right? This is an activity where you are building what you would like to see, building something that is needed, and not trying to go back and just recreate again in new packaging something that's already exists out there to just,
That's just
you know,
boring.
take.
Yeah. I've I've had an interesting like thought experiment recently, which is like the Olympics and the World Cup are being watched by billions of humans because we've successfully built the infrastructure to broadcast these pictures into the most remotest places on Earth. And not only that, the technology, we've also created this cultural significance of these two events. I don't know if there's anything
Mhm.
comparable, where whatever, culture, tribe, geolocation, whatever it is, you've most likely heard of it, and there's somewhere a TV on your way to work or in your village where this thing is happening and you can't avoid knowing about it, seeing it. Now, I wonder when will we get to the point where we not only have that one directional channel, but bi-directional channel, meaning an internet mediated form of information exchange, where every human on Earth at the same time votes on something without any government involvement. We have the governments, we have the UN, we have the media, we have all of that fine. But when will we be able, just that 5 billion, 6 billion, 10 billion people in the time frame of 48 hours click a yes or no button in an app about some question that might be of global significance? It's like I realized, wow, we have never done that. This is like a milestone for someone to take. Funny enough, Elon Musk sometimes does these, okay, it's not scientific, but here's a vote, who's going to become president. He knows he
Yeah.
cannot solve the problem. He cannot do this magic vote button. It's literally maybe the hardest coordination problem of humankind right now. How close are we to doing that, and what will get us there? I don't believe it's this vision of WorldCoin that says we have a device that scans the iris of every human and then everybody who has that scan now can vote. I think we need a sort of heterogeneous trust model that can still produce that outcome, but that has a much more pluralistic and heterogeneous approach to how we assess trustworthiness and the realness of a person. And I feel that Common Ground could, in its own way, contribute to that goal by being, in a sense, really a bridge. Because we're not building a protocol, we're literally just taking the best protocols and make an actual user experience out of it that can lead at some point to the existence of this heterogeneous but trustworthy sort of structure that is able to cast a vote that can be relied upon because there is sufficient signal and little noise, so to speak, which even Elon Musk can't do on his $40 billion investment. He cannot do that. It's impossible.
I'm trying to find the words because it's a great thought experiment. You're connecting everybody in that web of trust. So you're eliminating all of the bad actors who might try to create multiple identities, right? That's inherent in what you're saying. What I was thinking about while you were talking is it's making every stakeholder a participant, right? Because you can have stakeholders that are not participants,
Mm-hmm.
right? That's something that I think we have a lot
Mm-hmm.
of, specifically when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
voting. Every citizen who has a vote is a stakeholder, but our voting rates are significantly lower than 100%. My brain also went to, because you were saying getting this technology in front of this however many billion people we have at that moment. One of your tweets actually pops to mind. You said Africa is the
Mm.
future. And while you were talking, I'm thinking, talk about a continent that struggles with coordination problems, right? They might be highly coordinated in very localized environments. However, due to colonialism. It's super fractured. The power structures are opaque often, and they lack for a lot of the basic services that blockchain solves for, right? A lot of the problems that they have, blockchain solves. And one of those absolute move beyond finances, the ability to vote in a trusted system, right? For what you want in your local environment, like that, they don't have that. So your thought experiment might be for 8 billion people. And yes, I would love that. Like, vote. What's the best color? Let's go back to the dress. Is the dress
Yes.
right?
Honestly, that should be the first question to vote on. Is it white or black or whatever? It was blue or black. I don't know. Yeah.
But like, I mean, how are we going to allocate water
Yeah.
rights? That's a fundamental
Yeah.
question that impacts
Yeah.
people who live in that
Yeah.
area. For them to be able to
Yeah.
vote on it would be huge.
It would be so
And
huge. Yeah.
I feel like that's the little niche this conversation is happening in, obviously, because you're interested in it and so am I. But there's also a lot of people in this orbit that are interested in that. I think that group is expanding.
Mm.
Returning to the beginning of this conversation, there is that despair that's out there in the timeline that with a lot of participants, is this all it
Mm.
is, right? Is it empty?
Mm.
Am I just here to take your money from
Mm.
you and I win and you lose and
Mhm.
that's the end of it? I don't think that's what it
Mm.
is. And I really would love to have a thought. Maybe we don't realize 8 billion people voting on the color of the dress, but to have even better coordination to vote in our small little areas of the world on topics that are really important and impact me directly. If I had a way to affect change in that way, I become a stakeholder participant.
Mhm.
And that's so important. Oh my God. That's what I'm thinking about as you were talking.
Mm.
Holy crap.
Very good.
And I hope that comes to common ground. Jesus
Yeah, man.
Christ, right? How often are people talking about we need better DAO tooling? I wish I could vote on
Mm.
this. How can I trust that one person, one vote over
Mm.
there? To have that kind of integrated
Yeah.
experience in a place where people are coming together to meet in an ecosystem would be fantastic. And I think that there's a lot of opportunity there because the app layer is so barren at the moment, right? These things don't
Yeah.
exist, you know?
Indeed.
So
Amen.
totally cool.
Very good.
All right. Well, we've been going for way longer than
We
anticipated
did.
here,
We did.
Florian. And
It's my fault. I've been
I
rambling.
no, it's all good. I really appreciate you coming on, my friend. And I'm sure the listeners will as well.
Cool.